I currently serve as a senior survivor fellow for Everytown and Moms Demand Action. I do a lot of volunteer work with them. So every year, our amazing mayor puts forth a proclamation, but we also have this event to honor survivors, to honor those who have been taken by gun violence. We're talking about it as an epidemic, and it really is. And it's on us to end gun violence. Wear Orange is an opportunity for us to remember the human faces and stories and the people that we love behind all of this preventable tragedy.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How can we prevent this? How do you take a gun off somebody who's intent on going to kill somebody?
So this is like super complicated, right? It's not just ending the guns. It's banning, ghost guns and untraceable weapons. It's having violence intervention programs in communities before people start thinking about getting a gun.
What do you mean, like learning in school?
Learning in school, but also like working with different communities where there's high numbers of gun violence, or looking at other systemic causes of gun violence. And often that has a lot to do with things like poverty, and really talking about why are guns here, what are they being used for, what can we do about it. Too much of what we do is that preventative, or not enough of the preventative stuff. It's like, we're gonna put metal detectors in schools. I'm like, we need to go 4 steps before the metal detectors in schools. So there's a lot to look at.
Yeah, the schools have a big budget, and I'm curious as to why they're not classes that are given on negotiating conflict.
Right, and like de-escalation of conflict, and looking at there's been a lot of work in Holyoke with restorative justice, but that's not a national model. And if we're also looking at folks who are learning, we don't teach basic coping skills, and they talk all the time about how your brain isn't fully formed until you're like 21 or 22. We have to have more intervention programs. We have to do more education. We have to do more work at every level.
Okay, can I be the cynical person in the room and say that education is not going to do it? Because
not alone.
Okay.
Not alone. Education is not the only thing that we need to do. We also need to do this with good gun laws and good education, and teaching, folks not to pick up guns, and also safe storage. We haven't really talked a lot about safe storage yet, but it's crucial. And it's many more things. All of these things together must be done. It's not one single solution. Can you hear me okay on this?
Not really. Get closer to the mic.
Okay. Oh, there it is.
Go closer to the mic.
Okay, everybody got it now? Yeah. I don't know if I can get any closer to the mic. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Thalheimer. Thank you for coming out today, and all of you. Roka, thank you for backing us up in such spectacular style. I appreciate your presence and your work. So, very briefly, we are coming together to recognize Wear Orange, which is a national initiative to raise awareness and recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Traditionally, it spans the first full weekend in June. So this weekend, from the 7th till the 9th, is Wear Orange. We're just starting early. There are a couple of other events going on. There's another one in Springfield, the Save Our Streets initiative with the Darrell Lee Jenkins Junior Resource Center. So lots of different events are going on. This is a cause that is particularly important to me, not just as a Holyoker, but as a survivor of gun violence myself. I was an 18-year-old student in 1992 when a classmate of mine was able to legally and quickly purchase a cheap Chinese SKS, which he brought back to campus loaded with bullets, and started firing at everything that moved. He murdered my classmate, Galen Gibson. He murdered my professor, my mentor. And the reason I went into teaching and became an educator, Dr. Ñaconyan Saez, who was a native of Argentina, and was one of the most dynamic humans I ever met. So I carry them with me every day, along with the 4 other folks who were wounded and survived. But the lived reality that I have experienced is not the gun violence that we see every day throughout our nation. It is truly an epidemic at this point, and part of what we wanted to do with Wear Orange was not only to recognize that, but to put a human face and remember and honor those that we have loved that have been taken from us, those who have been wounded and survived, those who are still living with the after effects of gun violence, because you do not come out of it the same person that you were before it happened. And so to that end, we brought together a number of different speakers. We do have a proclamation from the mayor. We are also doing an initiative, so please come find me. We have these orange hearts, and on them we encourage you to write the name of someone affected by gun violence, someone in your personal experience, someone who you want to have honored. And that could be someone who has survived, that could be someone who was taken. They'll be posted up in City Hall this weekend, so when you drive by on the weekend, the clock face will be lit up in orange, and we'll see these throughout City Hall. So it'll be a tangible reminder and a way for everyone here to participate. So as I mentioned, we'll have a couple of different speakers. We'll also have a moment where we can open the floor, because this is a personal issue for many folks, and we want to make sure that anyone who needs a little time to speak out and honor those folks who they're carrying with them today, you will have the opportunity to do that. So having said that, I'm going to pass the mic to our mayor, who is behind me. Big round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate your work.
Thank you, Ann. What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much, Ann. I do want to also recognize, I have behind me State Representative Patricia Duffy, representing the 5th Hampton District. Carlos Gonzalez, aide. Ileana Gutierrez. Carlos Gonzalez chairs Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee in the Commonwealth. Shout out to Team Roca. Team Roca. I also have with me here our local city councilor, Patty Devine. So here we are, once again gathered for the annual Gun Violence Awareness Observance. And here we are, once again, gathered in the wake of a deadly shooting in Holyoke that just happened this Saturday morning, right down the street here on High Street. Time and time again, we are horrified and heartbroken by gun violence in our city and in cities across the nation. I thought, our Congress would have acted in 2012 after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, where 26 people were gunned down. 20 of them were children, little kids between the ages of 6 and 7. I thought, Congress would act in 2018 after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas school shooting in Parkland, Florida. 17 students and staff were shot dead. And surely I thought, surely that our Congress would act after a young man in Uvalde, Texas shot and killed 19 students, 2 teachers at the Robb Elementary School on May 24, 2022. I know that there were a few bills that were nibbled around the edges of the problem. A few were enacted, others died on party line votes. But we all know here that not much has changed. The legislatures of our federal government, their inability to bring real change to this issue has put pressure on local governments everywhere. I have many people pointing straight to me, saying, "Mayor, what are you going to do about this problem?" The best we can do locally is to invest in ideas and initiatives that we think and that we hope can prevent or at least minimize gun violence. Often, these initiatives spark debate and come across as controversial. That's the least that we want to do, is divide our community. Things like ShotSpotter, the conversation around whether or not we should invest in more police, active shooter lockdown drills in our schools, more surveillance, or even metal detectors in our public schools. These are the things that have created divide in communities everywhere, which, by the way, we do not have metal detectors in our schools. I'm just trying to prove a point. I tell you, I wish we lived in a life where we don't have to do these things. But we have to do something, because Congress doesn't really give us much of an option. Until our Congress develops the will to face the gun lobby, the shooting, unfortunately, will go on. Horror and heartbreak will continue. Communities will continue to divide as local governments try different strategies to help prevent the next tragedy. And then, and is going to continue organizing annual gun violence awareness observance. Don't take it from me. What do I know? Take it from the young lady who a few months ago lost her baby while riding on a PVTA bus. Someone who knows everything there is to know about heartbreak and suffering as a direct result of gun violence. I have here a proclamation I want to read, and then after that, I do want to allow my counselor to come up and share a few words. Also, Senator Vilas is here. Senator, if you want to come up and join us, thank you so much for being here today. The proclamation reads, every day more than 120 Americans are killed by gun violence and more than 200 have sustained non-fatal firearm injuries over the last 6 years. Americans are 25 times more likely to be killed with guns than people in other developed countries. And whereas protecting public safety in the communities they serve is a mayor's highest responsibility, support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens go hand in hand with keeping guns away from dangerous people. And whereas mayors and law enforcement officers know their communities best, are the most familiar with local criminal activity and how to address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe. And whereas June 3rd, 2024 would have been the 27th birthday of Hadiya Pendleton, a teenager who marched to President Obama's second inaugural parade and was tragically shot and killed just weeks later. To honor Hadiya and the 120 Americans whose lives are cut short and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every single day, a national coalition of organizations has designated June 3rd, 24 as the National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of, where's Ann? Ann, am I saying this young girl's name right? Hadiya, right? We're a group of Hadiya's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods. And orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. Now, there it be it resolved, there it be it proclaimed that I, Joshua A. Garcia, Mayor of the City of Holyoke, Massachusetts, do hereby declare Monday, June 3rd, 2024 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day here in the City of Holyoke. And I encourage the citizens to join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 3rd to raise awareness about gun violence and honor all victims and survivors of gun violence. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. And Ann, thank you so much for organizing this. And I will tell you that I will never be able to wear the color of orange again without thinking of those poor souls that perished, as well as those people that were affected by gun violence. So again, with all due respect to Roka, because they do a great job, I love the color orange, and I think it's important that when you see the color orange, you think of the poor souls that passed away. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Senator? Got it good. Did anybody want to come up and do a testimony or share any words? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Lynn Horan. I'm a resident of Holyoke. I am also at least related to a survivor of a gun accident almost 20 years ago. But first I wanted to thank Mayor Garcia for once again upholding this very important day. And as he astutely said, and Ann Thalheimer, it's a darn shame because what we should be working on is actually not meeting on this day because we have no need to. In my personal experience, it was my mother. I got that phone call from the emergency room department that asked me if I was sitting down and was someone with me, and the nurse proceeded in the ER in Baltimore to tell me of a person who attempted to shoot my mother. He put the gun to her head twice and fired. Fortunately, the gun malfunctioned. Then he pistol whipped her pretty badly. She was able to pull away, as I come from a long line of hard-headed women, literally. She locked the door and tried to call her friend, who was also aware of this person, as they both knew him, and many times that is the case. She could not get an answer from her friend June, just got the answering machine, and then the man tried to blow the doorknob off, which he was successful, of my mother's apartment, but fortunately the door held. He went back to his apartment, fixed what was wrong with the gun, or cleaned it, went to my mother's friend June Maxwell's apartment, a 78-year-old grandmother. She opened the door and he blew off her face and killed her. So this was also an incident of harassment. Before this, they were actually on their way to get an order from the police to restrict his ability to contact him, and he was being actually evicted from the apartment. What we did come to know that's important in this, that I wanted to relate to, is this man apparently had schizophrenia, but he was not getting treatment for it. He had an assault record, which both the police and his family members knew. His estranged wife was just that, afraid to divorce him for fear of physical violence. So these things go on, and I became a strong advocate thereafter for mental health care. One of many reasons this is part of the root of the problem. And also making sure that we have safe gun laws that do not allow someone that is ill like that to be using a firearm, especially with an assault record as well. And finally, I guess the last thing I would say, because there are many people, that was 20 years ago. My mother was fortunate to have lived. Maybe that made it easier for me to be gracious to the murderer. The other family was not so fortunate. They lost a mother, a sister, a grandmother. And the granddaughter of the woman that was killed, June Maxwell, had had an argument, as typical teenagers do, her last conversation before she got the news that her grandmother was dead. That young woman tried to kill herself because of. So these kind of ramifications in gun violence go on forever. And by the way, I'm a white middle class person. There are lots of folks that deal with gun violence in their lives on a daily basis. And so once again, we need to look at Congress. Don't just write our mayor. That's great, he's out here, but as he conveyed himself, there are only so many things he can do. Write your Congress people. Some of our folks are here today. Let's see some action for sensible gun control laws now. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Lynn. Anybody else want to share anything? All right. So that, Ann?
We may have some conversation amongst our legislative officials here about speaking.
Sure.
Which I...
Senator? Madam Rep?
Go ahead.
Hey, sorry to put you on the spot.
All I want to say is please do get in touch with your Congress people. The Massachusetts State Legislature has done great work on gun violence. There's always more to do. Keep us in the conversation, keep telling us these stories. But we have great red flag laws. We've got legislation that is in conference committee right now. And I, once again, am really proud to be a member of the Massachusetts Legislature because we lead the nation.
What's the red flag law?
I'll let John explain what a red flag law is.
I was going to say good morning, everybody. It's not good morning.
Hello, everybody. And I agree with the sentiment that somebody said that, you know, the wish, the endeavor, what we can all aspire for is for us to never have to attend an event like this. That's certainly something that is top of mind for all of us. Look, I think when we're talking about this conversation, I think it's very, 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 very critical to talk about all of this conversation. And here's what I mean by that. So, what a heartbreaking story. And the reality of the situation is that mental health, behavioral health, is such a critical, paramount part of this conversation. And the red flag laws, essentially put, in different states have different variations of what they are, but it essentially allows someone, what we call a petitioner, to go in front of a judge and say that a certain human being, because of a risk they pose to themselves or others, should not be carrying a firearm. That is a very oversimplified description of what red flags are. But I also want to talk about another part of this that I think is so drastically left out of the conversation so very much all the times. We have all these conversations about gun violence all of the time as folks have evolved and matured in life. And I think what we need to do so much better at, and in Massachusetts we need to do so much better at, is prevention. Why is it that so many young men and women feel that they need to return to the world of gun violence that is out there? And I think that the amount of money and resources we put into prevention is absolutely asinine. We spend so much time after the fact, criminal justice reform. Well, why don't we make it so the individual never is exposed to the criminal justice system? That's my question. Why don't we start there? So instead of talking about mandatory minimum sentences and stuff like that, we're talking about where is this individual going to college? Prevention. And then I want to talk about the part that we don't like to talk about as much that I think is absolutely critical. So I had an uncle who was a Superior Court judge. He was a Superior Court judge for about 15 years. And I asked him one day, I said, Uncle Pete, in all the cases that you've had where a firearm was involved, from a home invasion to a murder, go down the blank, any charge where a gun was involved, how many individuals had a legal license to carry that firearm? This is 20 years, 15 to 20 years on the Superior Court. You know what his answer was? Zero. So the part of this gun conversation that we never like to talk about is the violence that plagues so many of our streets. And you want to know what? In many instances, streets like Holyoke, where individuals over and over again commit gun crimes. And at some point in time, I would argue, and I had the most difficult conversation in Springfield about a month ago, and it was an organization of mothers who lost loved ones to gun violence. You know what the response was? Prevention. But why in God's name is it okay that in society today we have elevated the rights of folks who have been charged with gun crimes over victims? And I don't have an answer to that. I think at some point in time, you know, the mayor brought up a point. The mayor brought up a point about a shooting that happened not far from here in Holyoke, where a mother was shot and a baby was killed. A baby that never had an opportunity to live. Some of those individuals, the week previously, had interactions with law enforcement. The point I'm making is this. If you're going to have a conversation about gun violence and what's driving gun violence, have the conversation about all of it. Have the conversation about all of it. Have the conversations that's hard to talk about politically, because the reality is that over and over again, and God strike me dead, I hope I am wrong, there could be shootings today here in town, in my hometown, in Springfield, and other parts of the Commonwealth. And so much of what we endeavor to do doesn't get at the issue. And we need to do better about that, and we need to have difficult conversations. And by the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't sit at Roca and say how much I love that program.
Yeah.
Love that program. So it's just an honor to be here, and I'm going to finish with this. I recently was traveling abroad. Not recently, about close to a year ago. And it was a country that's in the news today with a lot of violence. But they came up to me and they said, John, you know, one of the things we don't understand about America, we love America, we love everything about it, but what the heck is up with these school shootings? I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. What the heck is up with all these shootings that we have in cities? I don't have an answer. Why do we spend so little time preventing people from going down this path instead of this path? I don't have an answer. We can and we must do better. Thank you.
Thank you. I have the answer. I think I have the answer to that question. I'm Rick Prasad. I live here in Holyoke. I'm a boomer. I've lived the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. I think I'm still a child now. But the answer to your question is, it's the guns. We didn't have school shootings when I was a kid, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s like we do now. It's the guns. Abolish the NRA so that our congressmen, elected officials, don't get grades. Our congressional here in Massachusetts, they get Fs because of their stance on gun violence. Abolish the NRA. The answer is get rid of assault weapons. You're a veteran, I'm a veteran. We know what weapons of war do. There's no reason for an AR-15 to be on our streets anywhere in America, period. Who wants with a AR-15 or an M16 or any assault weapon? If you do, then you're not a hunter. So the answer to your question is the guns. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Rick. And also, you know, the shooting that happened at the mall about a year and a half ago or so, the guy had a license. So we're not talking about just folks on our streets who are handling guns without a license illegally. We're talking about folks who have access to guns legally. So it's a very complicated issue, and my concern as mayor is how do I get my community to work together and doing what we need to do to proactively address these issues without dividing. And that's where I get frustrated. We try strategies, we try ideas with all the good intentions, and all of these ideas and strategies are often debated politically and create controversies that all we're trying to do is just prevent the next issue. And we're talking about for right now. We all know we need to invest more in our youth, and we're doing that. We all know we gotta do more in education and programs to keep kids off our streets, and we're doing that. That's long-term prevention. But what about the next hour or 30 minutes from now? Somebody that might be struggling with a mental health issue, don't know how to necessarily navigate their own frustration that leads to gun violence. What are we doing about those issues? What are we doing about guns, period? And that's where the frustration is with the conversation going today across the country. So I thank everybody for coming out today, participating and observing. And the counselor wants to say one more thing and then we'll conclude. Thank you.
Counselors always want to say something. No, forgive me for not mentioning that throughout the country, the police are also victims of gun violence, and we have to protect them as well. Thank you.
Again, thank everyone. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for your input. This is a complicated issue with a lot of different perspectives. Would people like to bring someone to the mic, please? And thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name's Sean Hurst. I'm a member of the ROCA staff, the ROCA team. The gentleman mentioned behavior change. That's what we do. We work on initiatives to help them stop and think and rethink their actions. And we tirelessly, relentlessly do outreach to these young individuals, visit them at their homes, on their jobs, just to check in on them, make sure they stay on that path. We use a system called cognitive behavior theory. We call it CBT. It's get them to, whatever triggers them, is to get their thoughts, their feelings, and their actions. And it's a stop and think initiative. So, and it brings down, because most of the violence, it begins with rage, anger. So quick to be angry, confrontational. So we work with that soft skills. And we, like I said, we relentlessly work with these young men and women. And our program has a great success rate. We're very proud of these young men and women. They've come from places like that, they've done things, and now we just bring them in and we help them change their behavior, because that's what it's about, behavior change. Yeah. You know, get them to stop and think instead of reacting off an emotion or a trigger. And we offer so much for them, help them get their license. We do, we give forklift training. They get the OSHA 10. There's a lot of resources that we have for them. Because a lot of them out there, that the only resource they got is a gun. So we give them more options in life than just being out in the streets. You know, we try to save them from poverty, incarceration, or reincarceration. You know, and help them just utilize certain skills that we give them and bring it abroad and spread it. And I thank y'all.
Hello, my name is Jalen. I'm from Roca. Gun violence is kind of a serious thing in my city in Springfield. A lot of people that are young, my age, they grew up in the streets and that's all they really did know. But all I could say about gun violence is that it does make us people, especially our culture where I come from, targeted a lot. And I feel like it's not just us, it's the people that's around us that's making gun violence. You know, it's a lot of people don't know, but it's kind of easy to get guns in the streets nowadays. It's real easy to buy them. It's real easy to get access to them. I feel like the cops do need to do a better job with trying to get guns off the streets. I feel like too that, yeah, that's all. I don't know.